Greetings, fellow Americans. Susanna for President 2028. Welcome to the 2024 edition of Franklin Delano Roosevelt's Fireside Chats. Last week we left off with the Economic Recovery Act section of the National Recovery Act. Today we're going to be talking about the security portion of that act. First, we're going to start with the immigration and border security issues. These are obvious. We have had a very significant problem in the last few years, especially with migrants just flooding through illegally. So we have a lot of illegal immigrants here now. My National Recovery Act and this portion, the Immigration and Border Security Act, actually focuses on this issue. We're going to start with something I've talked about in a couple of videos already. Technology at the border. This is going to be very important. It's going to be very critical to securing our border. A combination of security, like technology, and security in the form of personnel, such as our National Guard and such, is going to greatly increase the chances of our border actually being secure. There's some other things we're going to implement along with the National Guard being sent to the border. There is the idea that I've had about a civilian aspect of this. So basically a civilian department or a civilian branch of the Border Patrol that basically can be activated whenever we have crises such as we're having now. And these civilians would be trained just like border personnel. They would be an assistance to the border personnel that are regularly there. They would need to make sure their counseling was taken care of. They would be required to be in counseling for at least a short time, just to make sure that they understand some of the things that can happen, especially if they've experienced a traumatic event during their time there. Making sure these kinds of resources are available to anyone we send down to the border, regardless of whether it's National Guard or civilians. And there's a lot of civilians who would actually be willing to help in this area. And they have already taken it upon themselves to help in this area. What some of us would consider help. I think that it's a good idea, but with the proper training for these civilians, to make sure that they're not assuming something that like an immigrant is crossing the border because of human trafficking. It's important to understand the different situations that a person may be crossing the border. With the technology that we have through this plan, it's going to help stop a lot of the illegal crossings that we've experienced. It's also going to help in the areas where we're having trouble finding those people who are crossing illegally. Maybe they're using a different route through the border that we don't regularly check on. But right now, from my understanding, there's just not enough personnel to cover all of the areas they need to cover. That's why implementing National Guard and civilian aspects of border security is going to be essential in the personnel department. Also talking to farmers and those who live right along the border, asking them for their assistance, helping them with maybe their farming and a stipend or something of that nature, to help them in exchange for them helping us not have to build right across or right in front of their land. I know that was a problem with putting up some of the fencing that the Border Patrol or the National Guard implemented a couple years ago, something like that. These things really need to be handled carefully because we have to consider the humanitarian aspects of this issue. Yes, immigrants do need to cross by legal pathways, absolutely. When you have those who are being human trafficked, there's a little bit of a different situation there. Not everyone can go back to where they came from. Not everyone can go back across the border. So what do we do with them? We're going to have to figure out how we can deport these people, temporarily at least, so that they have an opportunity, especially if they're victims of human trafficking, instead of someone who's paid someone else to cross, to help them cross into the United States. That's a little bit different. When you're kidnapped and when you are basically forcefully taken from your place of origin, that does make a big difference. These people should have the option, if they so choose, to return to their country of origin. And we can help them with that. And that will greatly increase the chances of people who are crossing humans illegally being caught. Because we will be working with agencies like the FBI and Homeland Security, CIA. All of our agencies will be working together to secure our border, to make sure that those people who are responsible for trafficking humans and drugs and guns and all of the stuff that we need to stop to help make our nation healthier and less of a place full of crime and, statistically speaking, overdoses and death associated with these things. It's going to greatly help us reduce these things. It'll increase the chances of us being able to reduce the amount of trafficking that comes through. We're also going to be increasing the legal consequences. So right now, unless a person has committed an egregious crime, they generally don't end up doing a lot of time. So increasing penalties is going to also deter people from crossing borders by illegal pathways. One of the things that we're going to implement is working with other countries to temporarily house those that we have caught illegally. Perhaps we implement, and I think this is a good idea, implement a waiting period. So if you're an immigrant, you are caught crossing our borders in an illegal place, we would work with the country to ensure that you have a safe place to stay while you are waiting a probation and waiting period before you'll be eligible to enter the United States again. That is only if a person who is caught has no other crime other than just being there illegally. They've not hurt anyone, they're not on anyone's wanted list. They will be checked. That's part of the waiting period. They will be checked. We have to make sure to check everyone who comes through. There's going to be some changes to how many migrants we accept at one time. My implementation of this is reducing the amount of immigrants who cross our borders, who can come in through legal pathways, especially. Reducing all of that, including and especially illegal crossings. Reducing that to a point that we only allow 1,000 people in per month. That's per month. That's not including those who are from countries who are currently at war or under extreme violent conditions, like Haiti, uh, like Ukraine, countries that are, or people who are fleeing from war-torn countries, so, stuff like that. That's already in our title. So utilizing that as a baseline, making sure that those people do have a chance to get in for safety, and then those who are just crossing without being from a war-torn country like that, they have to be very limited on how many we can accept, and that's only temporary. The length of time that this particular portion can extend to is 2 years tops. Only a small portion of it can be implemented on a permanent basis, but that would have to take that would be through some legislation passed through Congress, in addition to this legislation.